Hello everyone, and welcome back to Possessed Radio. As always, I'm your host Steven, and thanks for tuning in. In today's chilling tale, we venture to the rough side of town to help a mysterious young woman. But as life goes to show, you can never receive help until you want it. And sometimes, at that point, it's far too late. This tale was written by me years ago on a bitter cold night, sitting alone at the gas station. I hope you enjoy, and as always, keep the lights off. This is the story of an eerie night I had on the last night of my first job. I don't really believe in stuff like this, but it still gives me the chills just thinking about it. When I was fresh out of high school, I started working at a gas station on the rough side of town. The specific location was just off the exit to the highway, sandwiched between a motel and a hotel. The rest of the street was littered with small, run-down homes from the 60s and full truck stops for weigh-ins thanks to the location by the highway. As you'd expect, an 18-year-old microbiome major didn't have a love for big rigs, wiping down gas pumps, or cleaning nasty hot dog grills. I was given the job by a family friend who worked for the company at a corporate level. They knew my family and used to come watch me play football. I had a reputation for being a bit aggressive and could hold my own when I needed to. So, naturally, I was the perfect fit to work a cash register and throw out late-night drunks. This may sound exciting, but the reality wasn't all that great. I would work second or third shift and often work doubles from 3 p.m. to 7 a.m. on the weekends when someone didn't show up. I was always a night owl, and I needed the cash, so I was up for anything back then. In the summer, the place was busy. People stopped in by the dozens to buy drinks on hot days, get snacks, or fill up while heading out for vacation. The winter time was less eventful. A morning coffee rush around 5 a.m., and at 7 p.m. a nearby factory would have break and swarm the place for snacks or a cheap meal. On the average day, I finished all my routine duties in under 3 hours, studied my books, and tended to the register as needed. When midnight hit, I would lock the doors, clean the place up, stock the coolers, and tend to customers through a revolving window. This made turning away drunks especially easy between the hours of midnight and 5 a.m. The real interesting people that I encountered came because of the hotel across the street, and the motel directly behind the building. It was pretty common for a tired trucker to crash at one of these fine establishments for the night. Some stopped for rest, others for recreation. Drugs were dealt from the hotel regularly. Part of my job was to even sweep the parking lot for needles and other paraphernalia. During my first week, I even watched police walk into the hotel carrying shotguns and rifles to drag a woman out by her hair before slapping cuffs on her. The real hotspot, though, was the motel. People went to the hotel to get high, but people went to the motel to get laid. Everyone knew the girls that lived there for long periods of time were prostitutes. I'd see them regularly stopping in. Some bought food, some bought condoms. There was always one in particular that caught my attention. No, I don't mean I was interested in her services, she just wasn't what I thought of when hooker came to mind. As I would later find out, her name was Gabrielle. She was tall, thin, with gorgeous long blonde hair. Considerably younger than most of the women from the motel, possibly 18. While the other women would come in chatting and shopping as if life was normal, Gabrielle was reclusive, shy, and hesitant. If it weren't for the fact that she came in for condoms regularly, I probably wouldn't have even found out what she was. I would typically see her around 7 every night when the factory down the road was taking break and the men would flock to her. When my first winter at the gas station began, I stopped seeing Gabrielle as much. She seldom came inside to make purchases, and when she did, she looked pale and gaunt. Then after about a month, she never came by again. I hoped she made a life outside of this place. But, realistically, I knew she was probably just busy working. Life carried on like usual for me, though. I went to school, worked the gas station, crashed, did homework, and repeated the process all over again. On one particularly cold night in February, though, I was locking up when I heard a subtle knock on the door. I didn't pay it much attention since some people really didn't get the hint that they couldn't come in after midnight. That's when the knocking grew louder and more frequent. I threw down the mop I was using and stomped over towards the entrance to give the guy a piece of my mind. But to my surprise, it was Gabrielle, shivering in the harsh, snowy wind in a skirt with a jacket that was far more for fashion than function. It was hard to make her face out against the lights above the entrance, and they began to flicker. She cried for help, and I gave in. I unlocked the door, and she stumbled inside, falling into me. I caught her by the shoulders as she buried her head into my chest, weeping. I was shocked. From what I had seen of the girl, she was an emotional robot with a permanent poker face. I guess you could only stay numb for so long before you break down.
I'm so sorry. I know you're not supposed to open up this late. Can I please use your phone? It's an emergency. I need to call my dad,
she said. I was a bit stunned and curious if her father knew what she did for a living. I figured it wouldn't necessarily be a pleasant conversation, and something must be real bad for her to be forced to make that call. I looked down into her teary blue eyes. Her cheeks were gaunt and she looked sickly. What's going on? Are you hurt? Should I call the police? Gabrielle clutched my forearms with icy hands, frantically shaking her head. I could see the bruises and discolorations down her arms. I didn't know if she was genuinely in immediate danger or just paranoid from drugs.
I know this isn't fair to you, but I cannot call the police. There is someone after me. Please just call him.
I had locked the doors and brought her into the break room where nobody could look inside and see her. If anyone was trying to get to her, they weren't going to go through a wall, so for the time being I gave in and chose not to call the cops. I handed her my phone and closed the door to give her some privacy. I could only vaguely hear a one-sided conversation. When I stepped back in, Gabrielle wiped the tears from her eyes. She could only leave a message. I put my hand on her shoulder, and she asked if she could try to message him on Facebook. Maybe his phone died and he was on the computer at home. I wasn't big on Facebook, so I had to quick download the app. She logged in and sent the message to no avail. I stepped out of the break room, peering outside into the harsh maelstrom of snow. Not a single car out there on that night. If someone was looking for her, they gave up or lost her trail some time ago. I brewed her a coffee and sat it beside her on the table. She was nodding off in the folding chair. I wasn't sure if it was from exhaustion or drugs. I closed the door softly, and I walked to the bathroom. The whole time I took a piss, my mind was racing. Something about this whole situation was unsettling. Gabrielle didn't look well, and for some reason the whole situation made me shiver. Literally, I was shaking and felt uneasy. I had to convince her to let me call the cops. But again, the lights began to flicker, and this time throughout the whole station. I sprinted out of the bathroom to make sure Gabrielle wasn't freaking out. But by the time I made it back over to the break room, Gabrielle was gone. I yelled her name out the recently unlocked front door. I could barely see 5 yards in front of me from the snow, and her prints were already covered with a fresh layer of powder. I never saw her again. The next day I got a phone call on my night off from a number I didn't recognize. I answered it anyway since I had been putting in applications to work in a safer environment and thought it might be a job offer. "Hello, this is Jason," I said confidently. "Why did you call me? Who gave you this number?" said a distraught-sounding man. I was confused and not sure what to say. You called me. My name is Jason. I don't think I called you at all." "Who is this? You called me last night leaving me that sick message. You think you're funny?" I had to think for a moment when I remembered I gave Gabrielle my phone. "Sir, are you related to a Gabrielle? I let her borrow my phone to call you." The man grew angrier. "Don't say her name. If you ever call me again and leave me a message with her voice, I will call the police. I am not a bad father." He hung up and I stared at the phone in confusion. What the hell just happened? I racked my brain for a bit and checked my recent calls. The numbers definitely lined up, and whatever Gabrielle said on that message took roughly 90 seconds. I'm not really sure how much you can say that fast to fire someone up so much. I opened up the Facebook app, and sure enough, Gabrielle was still logged in. Her inbox was loaded with messages from her father. Most were begging her to come home, that he'd get her help and make her life right again. She never seemed to reply to them, except for the message she sent from my phone. It's all your fault. I looked at her feed more closely, though, and noticed she had 99 plus notifications. Dozens and dozens of posts on her wall. They weren't from concerned friends and family to come home, though. They were messages saying I miss you and overdue apologies. I grew more and more confused until I saw a post she was tagged in written by her father. It was with so much sorrow that I inform you that earlier this Monday morning, the body of my daughter Gabrielle was found following a lengthy investigation. Foul play is suspected. I'd like to thank those of you who tried to reach out to her and those of you who were there for our family in this time of need. Thank you. A chill ran down my spine and my hand shook. If Gabrielle died Monday, who the hell did I see on Tuesday? What did she say in the messages to her father? I didn't go back to that gas station.